22-23 webinar. My name is Lisa Presslin, and I'm the program manager for the Paraeducator Workforce Development Program at PESB. And I am joined by my colleagues. I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hello, everyone. I am Alicia Arazim. I am just moved into policy associate role for the workforce unit and still hanging on for dear life for with the Paraeducator program. So still very much involved in this work. And I'm going to hand it off to Alejandra.
All right, thank you. Hello, if we have not met, my name is Alejandra Cruz Martinez. I use she, her pronouns, and I am new to the PESB workforce team. I am the educator workforce coordinator, and so I'm still kind of getting used to my role, learning more about PESB, and I'm very passionate for the work that we do. And again, if we have not met, I would love to meet with y'all on a more individual basis. With that being said, let's get these updates going.
So before we dive into our meeting, it's my honor to get to start us off with a land acknowledgement to mirror the tradition of Indigenous people who historically would ask permission to enter the lands of another tribe by acknowledging the lands and the waters and paying respects to the people. Acknowledging the value and the history that permeates the lands and the waters that we rely on is one small step we can take to center the importance of our partnerships with Indigenous people in all the work that we do. I'm joining from East Olympia, which is the traditional land of the Stay-Chos Band of the Squaxin Island tribe, also known as the People of the Water. This tribe is one of 4 tribes that reserved their sovereignty and their rights to fish and hunt according to their traditions through the Treaty of Medicine Creek, but they were also misled into giving up the vast majority of their lands, and they were barred from upholding many of their traditions for many years. I would like to honor this tribe and their resilience in preserving their culture and express my gratitude to the tribal elders, leaders, and members that have been stewards and protectors of these lands and waters since time immemorial. They have a beautiful museum in the Shelton area that I highly recommend visiting if you can. I invite everyone here to take this time to reflect on your roles as individuals, professionals, and community members in partnering with Indigenous people to ensure that the lands and waters that we live on can flourish for us and for future generations. I welcome you to type in the chat the traditional lands that you're joining from as an acknowledgement, and also feel free to add any reflections that you've had about your partnerships with Indigenous people. Thank you.
And for this portion of the presentation, I would like to guide this moment of silence. We would like to acknowledge the history of this nation, one fraught with contradictions. For too long, this country has elevated a story of democracy and freedom while minimizing the impact of violence and oppression on marginalized communities on whose back this nation was built on. Today, members of our Black and Asian communities and other communities of color continue to experience racism through police brutality, mass incarceration, inequitable education and health services, deportation, and many other forms of subjugation. We aim to disrupt this legacy of systemic racism by centering racial equity and justice in our work. This is how we stand with our communities of color. Before we begin, we want to offer a moment of silence to consider these words and how you might join us in this work.
Thank you, Alejandra. I appreciate that. So we have a fairly short agenda for today. We're going to go over the new program changes, the new reporting changes, focus on the April update, and then give you an opportunity to ask your questions and hopefully provide you with answers. So for the, we want to let everybody know that the chat feature is available because we changed this to a meeting. So please feel free as we're going through the slides to add your questions into the chat. Alejandra will monitor them. We'll answer the questions at the end, but we want to make certain that you're able to jot down your questions as they're popping up through the presentation. So that you don't miss the opportunity to have them while they're on your mind. So for the 22-23 program changes, many of you are aware, but we wanted to make certain that we're bringing this to the forefront because this is a big change, was a sweeping change, is that the fundamental course of study was funded for the first time since the inception of the program to be funded at full capacity. So 28 hours of the fundamental course of study was funded for new hires. So if you had a brand new paraeducator come into your district, then the expectation was that that paraeducator in their first year of hire would receive all 28 hours of the fundamental course of study. And so you'll have a cohort of paraeducators, first paraeducators that received 28 hours of the fundamental course of study, then a second cohort of paraeducators that were last year's paraeducators, so 21, 22 paraeducators that had received 14 hours of the fundamental course of study that now in the 22-23 year need to receive the second 14 hours to complete their 28. So that's a second cohort that will be the continuing paraeducators working on their fundamental course of study. And then a third cohort of paraeducators that have completed their fundamental course of study, but have not yet completed their general paraeducator certificate. And so those paraeducators will be working on their 14 hours of their general certificate. So those are the three cohorts of paraeducator certificate that we would be funding this year. Additionally, we had some reporting changes, some timeline changes. Historically, this first report was due in December. We had reached out to some, in late last fall, asking districts what would be good timelines. Most of you had reported that a later timeline would be better. And so we offered it. Most people had said like later February or in March. It is significantly later than that. That's April. That is due to me, Lisa Preslin, not PESB, not the rest of the department, not iGrants. That's Lisa Preslin's problem. I didn't understand some of the programmatic side of things and how the delays would be. And so I underestimated some of the challenges that I would experience being new. And so I apologize for that. And so if I'm sorry if that created some concerns for you and some stresses for you, I really apologize. It was my lack of understanding the role, lack of understanding the time that it would take. And so if you have issues or concerns about that, please direct them to me, not to anybody else. Everybody else was working really hard, trying really hard. It was me and me only. So again, Lisa Preslin, direct your concerns and questions and frustrations to me and me only. But April 21st will be the first timeline that that we will have you report. That'll be the first report. And then the second report will come July 7th. So for those of you who will finish your training at the end of the year, and some districts don't continue training beyond that. Some don't provide any training in the rest of the summer. Some just end there. We'll have an opportunity for you to submit your final numbers in July. So everybody will have to do a report in July because we do ask for a mid-report. But for those districts who are not going to provide any training beyond July for this year, you will have the opportunity this year to have that be your final numbers. You will be able to submit those as your final numbers this year for the first time. And then for those of you who will do training beyond that July report, we will ask you, instead of that September one, which had historically been the day that we asked for your final numbers, that's the last day to provide training as the way that the legislation is written. We wanted to not have you be doing training up until that day and then additionally have to do a report. So we're providing an additional month, which was also a recommendation that came from districts as a part of that survey that we sent out. You guys provided the feedback that said, please give us a little bit more time to get those numbers, those final numbers together, those training numbers together, as well as you're swamped with new school district, new school underway, lots of obligations, a lot of competing priorities. And if we could give you more time, you asked for it and we could give you more time. So October 2nd will be the deadline for that final report. So we just wanted to kind of show you in a kind of a snapshot, the old reporting timelines were those of you who've been around for a while, that December 15th, June 30th, and September 1st have now been replaced with April 21st, July 7th, and October 2nd. So that's just a quick snapshot of those changes. And then another reporting change is that historically you have had to do a report, even a survey, I'm sorry, you've had to do a survey, and that survey has been like on Survey Gizmo or Alchemer, and as a part of the assurances that you sign off on in iGrants, that has been required for reimbursement. So until you completed the survey, which historically has come out at the end of the summer or end of spring, and has asked a bunch of questions about the program, how the program is going, that has been required for reimbursement. And sometimes if you've had staffing changes at your district, it has gone missed or undone, and it has delayed your reimbursement or your payment. And in this year, we're trying something different. The survey is not required. It's not going to be on a separate, it's not in a separate third-party system. There will be 2 additional questions that'll be in iGrants. They're not a part of the assurances. So if you're unable to complete them, if you don't have those data captured, we were asking you to do your best to answer the questions. One of the questions is on vacancy data. So in the April report, we're asking districts to tell us how many paraeducators are currently employed and how many paraeducator vacancies currently exist. That's the April question. And then at the end of the year, we're asking districts to let us know how many training hours went that you provided that in the all or nothing model went unclaimed. So if you had provided a paraeducator with 13 hours and you couldn't claim that because it wasn't 14, or if you provided a paraeducator with 10, or somebody started their training and left the district, how many of the training hours are going unreimbursed to you? We're trying to capture what the real cost of training is to districts that is going unreimbursed to districts, so that we can get a capture of what the real cost is to districts for the training rather than what we are paying and reimbursing districts. So if we could capture those data from you, that would be great. And like I said, it's not required, and it's certainly not required for reimbursement this year. And those questions are in iGrants proper. It's not separate. And so those will be a part of your April reporting, and then either your July or October reporting, depending on when you submit your final. There's also an additional question about contracted paraeducators, and it is just either yes, we do, or no, we do not hire contracted paraeducators. And then on the final submission, the old way was that you could only do a final submission in September. September 1st was the final submission, and that was the only submission. This year, we're giving districts the opportunity for those, again, who don't provide any training beyond they end their training in the summer or at the end of the year. They don't provide any additional training, that those districts will be able to submit through their July report to say that this is their final report. And for those districts who submit that as their final, then their reimbursement will come through apportionment in September. So they'll submit their final in July and their reimbursement will come on September's apportionment. So again, your reimbursements. So if you're a July reporter, your reimbursement will come in September. And if you are an October reporter, so you would report in October. So you'll report on that October 2nd. If you are an error-free, this is an important part, so I want to make sure that's clear. If your report is error-free, no massive errors, no large errors, then your apportionment, your reimbursement will come on your October apportionment as well. So if you're a July reporter, you'll get it in September apportionment. If you're an October reporter, you'll get it in October's apportionment.
Sorry, I couldn't get the unmute button there. Thanks, Lisa. So now I'm going to go over what it looks like at iGrants for this April update that's due April 21st, and just kind of go through piece by piece what we want you to have finished for the April 21st submission. But before I do that, I just also want to name that Lisa is taking all the responsibility for us not getting this out to you sooner. And I just want to say that she was working very hard to make sure that the package was understandable and easy to use. And I think all of that effort has really paid off in the form package being a lot easier to navigate, because there's a lot of little ticky-tack details with this. And so I just want to say that I appreciate all of Lisa's effort, and also, you know, I know that us being late with getting this out has probably caused some anxiety, but hopefully it will pay out in the end with ease of use. So just want to name that, because Lisa put a lot of effort into this, and I think it really has helped. So the first part of the iGrants package that we would like you to take a look at for this April update is the implementation contact. And I say this is the first part for April, but honestly, if there are changes in the contact for the program between now and when you submit the final numbers, whenever you submit them, please update it. So make sure that it is accurate for the first submission, but then when you're doing your next submission, update it if the contact has changed, because one of the things that makes this difficult for us is when we're reaching out to districts and we're reaching somebody who's not there anymore, and we don't realize it until we've tried several times, and then we're getting close to a deadline. And so really, really helpful and important if this contact can be up to date. And so when you put any changes in here, just make sure you hit that handy dandy save button, and that will help us out a lot. The next important part for the April submission is this vacancy piece that Lisa was talking about. As she mentioned, answering this question is not in the assurances for the iGrants package, so it is optional, but we really, really hope that if you are not the person who knows the answers to these questions, that you can hunt that person down and try to get the answers to these questions, because it will help us out a lot when we're trying to ask for the appropriate amount of money to fund this program, to know not only how many paraeducators are actually employed in districts, but how many paraeducators would be employed if your districts were fully staffed. So in this first box here under head count, what it's asking for is the head count of paraeducators who are currently employed at your district. And obviously, like that, we're just asking for at this moment in time. It's going to be just a snapshot of where you're at right now. And so if you can provide that for us in April, that will be very helpful. And then the second box here is how many vacancies you have by head count. And again, just snap in the line when you're reporting, just let us know what those numbers are at that date. And then at the bottom here, this is the question that Lisa also mentioned about contracting agencies. If your district has used a contracting agency this year to fill any paraeducator positions, please select yes as your answer to this question. And then if you have not, select no. Stacy, I see your hand, but I hope that it's okay if we wait until the end to answer questions. So you can type it in the chat so you don't lose your question, but we'll kind of get to all the questions at the end. So then in the next and meaty piece of the April update, this is the reporting piece, and it looks very different than it has looked in previous years. But I think that this is going to be a lot clearer for folks what is being asked, what numbers you're supposed to put in each little section for the individual reports. One thing I want to say with this is we've chosen to do 3 reports this year, partially because we're in a transition year. So previously, as Lisa was mentioning, it used to be that we were providing 14 hours of the SCS each year. And so, you had paraeducators who were doing the first 14 and paraeducators who were doing the second 14. And now this year, they're doing all 28 in 1 year. So that gives us 3 different cohorts of paraeducators to track. And with this new change, we just want to make sure that districts know that the 28 are required for new hires this year, and that they're still tracking the paraeducators who got 14 last year, and then this is only the second year where the general certificate is a requirement as well. And so with all of those things in place, we felt like it was important to still have 3 reporting reports from you folks. As we move forward, we're hoping to decrease the number of reports that are required to hopefully just 2, because I feel like we're asking a lot from you, and if we're really, it's not that important that we have this many reports when things are more routine. So that's where we're headed. In case you're hoping that's where we're heading, that is where we're heading. But this year was just not the right year for us to make that switch because we had the new requirement come up. So that's why there's still 3 reports, just for your information. But for this April update, it's this column right here that we're gonna, I hope you can see my cursor. But the column under April update is the column where we want you to put in numbers for the April update. So it hopefully is clear. So in the first box next to FCS new paras, this is the number of paraeducators who have received all 28 hours of their FCS training at April 21st. So, and actually at the point that you're doing the reporting. So if you report before April 21st, it's the number of paraeducators who have received all 28 hours of their training by that date, because you can't really project into the future. So by the date that you do the report, how many paraeducators have received all 28 hours? Then in the box below that, how many of your paraeducators who started the FCS last year have completed 14 hours this year? So that one can get a little more complicated, because it's like, I had some paraeducators start it last year, but they needed to get, more than 14 hours this year. Do I count them here? If they received 14 hours of training or more, count them here. If they have not yet received all 14 that they need, or they've received less than 14, do not count them here. Only those who have received 14 or more should go here. And then at the bottom box under the April update column, that's where you'll put the number of paraeducators who've completed the FCS, who completed it in previous years and have received 14 hours of training towards the general certificate this year. They could have received more than that. That's fine. It's just they have to have received at least 14 hours at the point of your reporting. Hopefully that makes sense. And the reason why we put it in this table is because, and I say we, and I should say Lisa, the reason why Lisa designed it so that it would be in this format, because she's the one who did all the heavy lifting here, is so that you can see how each of these numbers correlate to each other. When you put in your numbers for the July update, you'll see that the total number of paras will increase in the final column, or on the second to final column. You'll see that the number will reflect both the April numbers and the July numbers. It will add up so that the final numbers is in that column. So it makes it a little clearer, like, is it supposed to be cumulative? Is it not supposed to be cumulative? The cumulative number will appear for you so you can see how the numbers relate to each other. And it won't be such a, like, I don't know what you're asking kind of situation. So when you submit your final numbers, whether it's in July or October, the total number of paraeducators that you're reporting will automatically populate. And so you won't have to do that math. The math will be done for you. And then it will also auto calculate the number of hours. So those are things that you will not have to do. It will, the system will do it for you, and it should provide some clarity as to like what numbers go where. So that's the plan as of now. And when you do your April update, make sure that, you reach out to us if you encounter any issues or it isn't making sense. But that's partially why we're doing the webinar. So you can ask those questions here as well. But we're always happy to help. So moving on, there's one other detail here that is important. And this is in the instructions at the top of the iGrants package. But one thing about the package that has changed is we've tried to move from doing things on multiple pages to doing things in one page. It helps on our end pulling data out so that things align well. But it also makes it easier for folks to just, you have your assurances on one page, and then you have the entire application on another page, and you don't have to worry about toggling to different pages and marking different pages complete. But the flip side of that is that when you're doing your reporting, it's important that you save the data, but do not mark the page complete. Once you mark the page complete, then you can't edit it. So it's important that you just save your work. Do not mark the page complete when you do your April update, because you're not done, right? Like, you've only given us the April snapshot. You'll still need to either supply information, your final information in July or October. So once you're done, so say you do your final submission in July, once you're done, then you can mark it complete. But not in April, just hit save is the moral of the story on that. Okay, that is all the content that I have to cover. So I think we can move on to questions. Feel free to type questions in the chat or just unmute, and we are here to help.
Hi, this is Marcy from Prosser, and my chat doesn't seem to want to work for some reason, but I had a question on the reporting. Say, for example, in your April reporting, you have 10 paras that completed the FCS. And then in July, you have 5 more. Do you enter 5 or do you enter 15?
You would just enter 5 in the July. So
Okay.
you enter 10 for April and then 5, and the table will do the math for you.
And then, okay. And then on the final one, because I'm assuming we would do it in October, we would add, for example, say 5 more, and then it would add up to 20 total. Correct?
Yes.
Yes.
I love this.
Great.
I also have one more question. So all paras that are newly hired as of what date? Because we've just hired a few more paras just recently. We try to get all their 28 hours in this year still.
So this is a very interesting question that has recently come up by many districts. Hasn't recently come up, it's been coming up for a couple questions. And so we've consulted a number of parties, and we recently have determined a responsive answer that we finally ended on something that is in alignment with the law, and we will have a gov delivery going out for all districts with some guidance on this topic, probably early next week, because it is probably not it was not the intention of the law to have people trying to hire people in 1 month and providing them with 28 hours of training in a month. And so there's guidance coming, we'll provide guidance. It will come out probably early next week. So be looking out for a gov delivery about this exact answer.
Okay, super. Okay, so more info coming out via gov delivery. Okay.
Probably, yeah, I would say probably, I would expect it no later than Tuesday of next week. The
Oh,
language should come out no later than Tuesday of next week.
Okay. I feel like I had one more question, but I'll come back to it. I can't think of it right now.
I have one question.
Sure.
So what about people that have completed 14 hours at another district, and they come to our district and they complete the remaining 14?
That are first year, Jared?
Correct. Like we just hired them from like another district.
I see.
And so they don't want to do their other 14 because they've already done 14. And so they kind of like completed everything with us, but it's like a split between 2 districts.
Yeah, I would say then in that case, if you just want to let us know who they are, then we would just have both of you report them in the way that we would just have you like report the 2 year. We would have you kind of report them as like the 2 year. You would take the 14, they would take a 14 of like the second year people.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. I feel like we couldn't have made it this clear. There has to be more questions.
I know, right?
We have to do 20.
I do have a question. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
okay,
thank you.
sorry. So the question regarding contracted staff, I see that you're just wanting to know yes or no.
Mhm.
Why are you wanting this information?
For the contracted staff.
Yeah,
So we were unclear about how prevalent use of contracted staff are out in the schools. And so we provide guidance. PESB does provide guidance for contracted staff for certificated positions. So like school nurses, occupational therapists, all those sorts of things. But we didn't provide any guidance for paraeducators because it wasn't really a thing.
yeah, and obviously
Now it's a thing.
typically not, but
Now
this year it has become a thing.
Yeah.
Right.
But we don't want it to continue as a thing because it's hugely expensive and
Yeah.
not really what's best for kids ultimately, because being a regular employee is better than a contracted employee. But my question is I don't want to be penalized for this question, but I'm going to ask it. So
Sure.
sorry. I do not treat contracted employees like regular employees, and I am not training them in fundamental course study. I would expect their contract company to do that with them separately based on their actual employer, and we're paying an invoice to that company to ensure they meet the minimum requirements that the state has mandated. So the way I have been processing contract employees this year is if it's during the regular, like if we provide training during their regular workday when they're not with students, then they can participate in the training that we're providing within their work hours. But we do not pay them extra on an added pay sheet to attend a fundamental course study training outside their workday like we do a regular employee. Mostly because the cost is twice as much, and it's, so, and again, we feel it's the contract company's responsibility to ensure they're meeting the requirements. So therefore, I see that question on there and it makes me raise my eyebrows of like, okay, shoot, am I doing it wrong? But the other part of me feels like we're doing the best with what we've got. And this is an unprecedented year referencing not having the staff that we need. Sorry, I don't even have my microphone down. You guys could hear me. Well,
We can hear you.
and yeah, and again, I don't want to continue with contracted paraeducators. It's one thing when we have the specialty nurses or SLPs or OTs, that's very understandable. But in the para realm, it's just not something we want to continue.
Sure.
And we haven't had great success either. Although it has, again, it has met a need.
Mhm.
They're more revolving than a regular paras, which is just exhausting as well to do the candidate screening. Anyway.
Sure. So
Sorry.
Don't apologize.
This is frustrating time. So we needed to gather these data for our board, because our board asked us to gather these data because they need to get a sense of what it's like in the district right now.
Yeah.
Do they need to address it? Do we need to have guidance? Do we need to be providing guidance? And also, what is really happening, and why is there, why are districts having to go to agencies to hire paraeducators? And so it highlights another problem and another issue of what's happening in the educator landscape as far as paraeducators are concerned.
Yeah.
So we wanted to just gather what is happening. So we're asking for that question first in April, and then we ask for it again at the end of the year to see if there's any change, like in between that little window of time as well. Additionally, there is inconsistency between agencies, between those that ask for training and those that don't ask for training, and contracts are different between districts who ask for the training, don't ask for the training. And so there's also just some questions about what do we want or don't want for just a flat baseline of expectations, as far as what the expectations would be for if people are going to have a contracted paraeducator in the school.
Yeah.
Now, what that is and what that looks like is not my decision. That's a board decision and a larger conversation that would be had with district feedback and paraeducator feedback and partner feedback.
Yeah.
We need to know what is this landscape first, how many school districts are even using contracts. And I think it's much larger than what we had anticipated.
Yeah.
A lot more districts using contracted paraeducators than we had originally thought.
Well, like I said, it was our first time this year in the para realm. And the thing that I noticed, just as I guess my contribution there to that situation, is we have higher student need than we have ever had in the past, referencing one-on-one and behavior. I would say that percentage is probably the reason why we weren't able to fill the need. and why we had to go contract out, because I think the student need probably, the one-on-one student need probably doubled. So that would be my biggest, well, I guess that would the student need just increased that much this year. The other question about the vacant positions. So I find that I just want to share this because I'm assuming everybody else has the similar problem, and I don't know if I should be speaking out or not, but we still have 25 open positions. And again, they're not the positions that were open in September. It's just the constant new needs keep coming up as new students enroll, or the need happens for students. But I probably have 20 paraeducator contract employees filled in positions, plus I still have 25 vacancies, and it's April. But again, I've had new IRFs every week from buildings because the student now qualifies for the IEP. And that shift usually happens in November, and we're doing another big hiring in December for student need. But it's just been happening every month. That need has just increased and increased for students. So I'm just sharing that piece. Sorry. The iGrant looks great. I do appreciate it. It is a tracking nightmare when you're asking the questions, the number of paras who didn't complete it and left the position.
Yes.
I mean, I have paraeducators resign every day.
Sure. And again, it's
and I
not-
have a
if you can't-
spreadsheet,
if you
and I'm
can't,
doing
yes.
the best I can, but I just
You
want
know,
you to know
Kim-
when you
Kim-
ask those
Kim is like-
questions, I'm like, are you
Right.
kidding
And
me?
Kim, I know, and Kim is raised, Kim Van Atta, who has a paraeducator load of like what, 1,500, 1,700 something. She's putting thumbs up like, yeah, are you kidding me with these like ridiculous granular questions? So yes, I agree. I asked them with like, I had to put dream questions out there. These are like dreamland questions. If you have them, please give them. If you don't,
Do you just want us to put NA if we're not really tracking it, or do you
just
want a 0?
Put in there what your best case effort, you're close enough, so
Okay.
your whatever you can give us as a close enough. So yes,
Fair enough.
I do realize that these were some unrealistic expectation, but I had to dream big while I was out there. I do, yes, I appreciate the like eye roll and are you kidding me? Yes, I do appreciate that. I want to make certain that we're getting to the chat though too. So Cassandra, for employees that have completed their general certificate, if we continue to provide training for them, can we still claim them as a person who completed their 14 hours this year? So this is such a great question and one that comes to us quite regularly. And so I will say this, there is, so in the letter of the law, that would be no, but I want to make sure that we're checking, I want to check with our executive director before we put a final stamp on a no with this one, just because there's potentially some alternate options that might be available in this particular window before I respond to you. But in the letter of the law, the answer would be no. And then Kim, we have to do 28 hours of training in 1 month for paras. We hire on August 31st before September 1st. It would be great to recognize that training deadline is unrealistic too. Yes, that absolutely. There's unrealistic. $28 hours in a month. I think everyone, and Kim, we also wanted to recognize your raising awareness to that certificated educators at the rate that they do professional development is only 20 hours a year, not
Thank you.
28. So I know, I said that was a really great point and one that we have raised a few times since then. that at their 100 hours every 5 years is only 20 hours a year, not 28. And we've used it a couple times.
Thank you.
Missy, if our district host training for the next school year is August, would it need to be reported on this school year's final reporting? Does it need to be? Are you asking if it must be?
Hi, I'm asking if it must be, because we count our August training as pre-training for the school year, even though the student year doesn't start until September. Our training in August, we count it for that year. But for the purposes of this report, if it happens in August, am I reporting it on my final report in October here for this school year? Or can I count my August training for the final report for next school year? I guess the
So-
question is school years versus fiscal.
Yeah, I understand your question, Missy, and it is that this is the tricky part when the timeline overlaps the way that it does. And the intention behind that was that for your paraeducators who are making it, they were hired for, we'll say this school year, they were hired in this school year for this school year. We wanted, we wanted the timeline to, and the timeline does extend to September 1st for you to provide them with training, depending on the size of your district. And so for those folks, it's kind of like, we want you to have until September 1st to provide them with the training and be reimbursed for the training. But for the folks that you're hiring for the next school year and you're providing them with training, you could even be providing both these folks with the same training at the same time. But, for the funding, the training for the folks who were hired for the following school year, not this current, but they're hired for the school year going into, we would expect you to claim them for reimbursement in that following year. With that, that's what our expectation would be. There's no must. You don't have to claim them with this year. You don't have to. Can you? I mean, it's kind of up to you. We just don't want you to double dip, basically, is what it comes down to. You claim them once. If you want to claim them on this year's, you can. If you want to claim them in next year's, you can. Just only claim them one time is basically what it comes down to. Because we know that it's just everybody tracks it differently. So for some folks, it makes sense to just claim them with the next year based on their tracking mechanism. And for some folks, that's not what makes the most sense. So does that help, Missy? I don't know if I answered your question very well, but
No, that helped. Thank you so much. I think we'll just stick with our June 30th cutoff for this school year, and then that's perfect. Thank you.
of course.
The program is can be frustrating in that it is 15, the window of it is 15 months. So the way that the law is written, it runs 15 months. And so those 3 months swing either way. And that is what creates a lot of confusion for folks. That July over to September, though, that little window there can swing both ways, and people get very like, what do we do with that? And it's kind of like, well, you can do what you want with it. You can make it a trailer or a header, whichever way you want to go. And that always creates a little bit of confusion for folks. So you're not alone, Missy, in your confusion with what to do with that.
Yeah. Okay, I see John's question in the chat. If a para comes to us with or has otherwise completed 17 FCS hours in 21-22 and then completes 11 hours in 22-23 to reach the 22-23 amount, do we have the ability to be reimbursed for the 11 hours in 22-23 since they did not complete 14 in 22-23? I appreciate this question. I think it's a very valid question. According to the law, as of now, the answer is no. The reason why we're asking the question about how many training hours are going unreimbursed is so that we can try to take some steps so that districts can be reimbursed for these kinds of partial training situations that occur not because the district didn't provide training or didn't try to get the paraeducator the required training. They did supply them with the required training that they needed, but it just didn't reach the threshold of 14 hours. That's a specific instance of a paraeducator not getting the required training in one district, where it doesn't feel right that can't be reimbursed. There are other situations where like maybe it's not as clear, but this is a clear situation where it's like the district did their due diligence, they provided the training that was required. So how can we make that reimbursable? And that as of this, for this report, the answer is no. Those 11 hours cannot be reimbursed. And I know that's not a good answer and we don't like that answer, but that is the answer for this school year. Hopefully in coming school years, that will not be the answer. And so we're working towards that. And as soon as we make any progress in that direction, we will be letting districts know so that you can know what to expect. But once we have that information of how many training hours are not going reimbursed, then we can make a better guess at what our options are to start getting that addressed. Because at this point, we don't know what the money would be. We don't know how much money it would be if we were reimbursing districts for all the training that doesn't reach that threshold. So we kind of have to get an understanding of that and come armed with that information in order to be convincing in our arguments for changing the way things are done. So thank you for asking that question. Just hope you can be patient with us as we work towards more equitable system.
It appears that there is a lot of, we all know that there's a lot of time and effort being spent. There's a lot of time and effort being spent on this program from a HR standpoint, professional development standpoint, tracking standpoint, that is going unreimbursed to districts. And we're looking for ways to rectify that, and any way that we can find some easy, I'm so sorry, my dog, a wind blows in this house and he's barking, so I apologize. But we're looking for ways that we can easily move the needle that would make it very easy for our legislature to say, yeah, that makes sense. Let's just do that. Yep, go ahead and do that. That makes sense. And it seems to us that this would be very easy to make sense. Like, they're providing the training. It's just we have an all or nothing model, and these are how many hours we've asked them. They told us that's why we're asking you the question, so that we can say, this is really the real cost. These are how many hours are going unreimbursed to the districts that they are in good faith providing to paraeducators that they're not getting reimbursed for. And that wasn't the intent of the program.
Got about 3 minutes left, and I want to obviously, if you still got questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat. But I'm going to share my screen again because I wanted to make sure that everybody here is aware that we are offering office hours every week. So on Tuesdays, we do office hours from 3 to 4 for district folks to come in and ask questions. So we're there every week. If you think of a question between now and Tuesday, please pop in and ask us. I mean, obviously you can always email us, but sometimes it's just easier to hash things out over just talking to each other. So that's an opportunity we want you guys to make sure to use if you need. And then also we have office hours for paraeducators. So if you have paraeducators who have questions that you don't know the answer to, or that you think they just need to talk to somebody, and this is an opportunity for them to come talk to us. So spread this around to your paras as well. And hopefully so far we've had some great conversations in these office hours, and I really hope that they just continue to be a good resource for everybody.
Come and do your iGrants package with us.
Yeah, we will walk you through step by step.
We'll walk you through the whole thing.
Yep. Exactly. And yeah, that was about it. Got our fun connect with us slide here. Hopefully you know how to connect with us. But the plan is we're going to do one more of these webinars on April 12th. And then after we've completed that webinar, we're going to send out an email with the slideshow and the recording to everybody. And so for folks who couldn't attend can benefit from all of your wonderful questions. And yeah, we'll include the office hours and yeah, I'll stop sharing so that we can enjoy our last minute together, just looking at each other. Oh, everybody left. Okay, there we go. I'm gonna
Right.
stop recording.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad that